To the sound. To the sound.
All right, welcome. It's Friday, 8:30 Pacific time. Was going to do this at 8:30, but hey, I'm going to do a little early. Better early than later, I guess, most of the time. But anyways, welcome. It is Friday Night Hangout. Yes, I have the link to join in the above part of the live chat pinned to that. Nobody will be shown on camera, so don't worry about that. You don't have to get all prettied up. I'm certainly not. It's Friday, and I'm drinking coffee. I got some housework to do tonight after this, so got to drink my coffee, got to stream, spend a little time with you guys, and then get some housework done. So that's my agenda for this evening. But if you guys want to join in, talk about the state of the debate kind of thing, dealing with this new kind of influx, I guess, of Christian apologists, by all means, if you're Christian, theist, atheist, it doesn't matter, agnostic, I don't care. But if you have something to say, come on in, let me know your opinion. But I want to give you my thoughts on it because recently, as you guys know, I'm trying to get back slowly acclimating myself, I guess, back to the debate community kind of stuff. I've got a pretty significant debate coming up this Sunday, and that's with Andrew Wilson. He's from the Whatever podcast and the Crucible, and he's going to be debating Jessica Kill, who is a friend of mine, who is a trans right activist that is advocating for just allowing females into athletic competitions. And she's a staunch. Well, I don't know. I don't want to say she's a staunch Republican. She's a conservative, that's for sure. But she definitely has a very strong views, and most of them I do agree with. So I think it's going to be a pretty interesting debate on Sunday because they're going to be talking about whether transgenderism is immoral to society. And I know people are going to have a lot of things to say on that. I know that's going to raise the hair on your arms and make the back of the neck stand up. But it's not as bad as you think it is, because I think that most people would answer no to that question. I don't think I'm platforming somebody to give them an open platform. I think Jessica will give a substantive response to Andrew's arguments, which I have listened to before. I have seen him on the Crucible. I've seen him on the Whatever podcast. I've seen him debate Matt Dillahunty, Destiny, and so I'm at least moderately familiar with some of his arguments. It does, to me, a lot borderline on rhetoric. However, he does have some philosophical knowledge. The guy is not stupid. You may think he is a bigot or whatever, and you may be right, but he's not stupid. And so I pitted someone against him that I thought could handle it and could handle his verbal jabs, because that's what he likes to do, right? So I thought Jessica would be a perfect person for that. She's intelligent. She's formidable. She's articulate. She has good arguments, and she's transgender, which means she's in that niche that they're talking about. So I thought that would be a perfect match. I do want to thank, though, Josh Brister for making that kind of happen. I do owe him one. I'll go on record to say that I owe Josh one. He's known as Red Pill Alive or Red Pill Apologist. Both those are his Twitter handles. But I definitely own one. So I'm going to try to get something going for him, because they didn't really want 4-on-1 or big panel. And I understand why, right? Because you get more than two people in, and it does get very, very difficult to control. Let's just say that. The over-talking is a lot, and you don't really get to the crux of the matter. And everybody wants to get their points in, which is understandable, but it doesn't make for a good conversation. And I want this to be a good conversation, because I already know there's going to be people like, I already had one person, only been one. Why are you platforming him? Look, I platform people all the time that I don't necessarily agree with, and I do believe that sunlight is a good disinfectant in many cases. This, I think, is one of them. I don't agree with Andrew. He's been very nice to me. I'll tell you that, though. He's been very civil, very cordial, very nice. My friend Shane says that he met Andrew in person in DebateCon, and he wears two faces. I'll give him that. And you might be right. I mean, if you met him, he seems to be a very nice guy. I just don't like his rhetoric, because I think he goes overboard. And of course, he's looking at things from a Christian perspective, which I don't have, right? I mean, he fundamentally, I guess, believes that homosexuality and transgenderism is against societal norms that we as a society have a certain duty to give back to society. That includes reproduction. That includes, well, basically, I think it's basically reproduction is his main issue, although I don't find that to be a substantive argument. Um, people that want to reproduce can, people that don't want to produce don't, but it hasn't really had any effect on society. Our growth rate is still positive. We're not going to die out as a civilization if people become transgender or people become gay and they don't want to mate with the opposite sex. I mean, it's just not going to happen. It's a very small percentage of the population. I'm guessing no more than 10 to 13%. I think some things I've read. If you go with the fact that they're not going to be mating with the opposite sex. And that's been around since the dawn of time. So it hasn't really had a major effect on our society. And so when we're talking about duties or obligations to our society, then, I do believe we have duties. I do believe we have obligations. I do believe there's some contractualism there. If you want to look at a Scallion approach, if you go look up his views on contractualism in a book called What We Owe Each Other, which is a book I tried to get through. I couldn't. I just tell you right now, I'll just say I didn't even read it because it was so dense. I did try. It is a very dense book, and it is the book that The Good Place was predicated upon. A lot of it was based upon that book. But I did want to talk this evening more about the theists that have come around rather than the atheists. I'm always bashing on the atheists, and I do that because as a non-believer, I want the atheists to get better in the argumentation, right? I don't want them to make non-believers look bad, because if they look bad, then by extension, I look bad, sort of. Although I will say that I thought I did really well in my debate against RC loves JC, right? What's his name? Rob, right? Rob Grown. I think that's how you pronounce the last name. But I mean, I was cordial. I explained the facts of the matter. I explained to him concepts that he clearly was not aware of. And then he went on to Jackson Wheat's channel and debated about macroevolution. And honestly, it was far worse than the debate they had against me. Even though he didn't know either subject material, he was a lot more aggressive in the Jackson Wheat debate. And I got to tell you, if you're going to be in these types of debates, sure, there's times to lose your crap. I get it. I get it. I do. I certainly am not one to say that I never did on the Non Sequitur show. But pick your battles. Shane says he's quite nice to your face, but then he has an audience. He'll split and shit out your face is unfortunate. I believe that. No, I very much believe that. And Shane, when you want to come in, the link's above. So come on in. I have it ready. Like I said, nobody's going on camera, so it doesn't matter. Nobody can mess up the hangout. But if you want to come in, come on in. Let me know first so I don't forget to look over, because I'm not really looking at the studio. So I may not see you drop in, but so kind of let me know if you do. I need to talk to you later about letting me get editor permissions for the Non Sequitur show, similar to how Bull had, so I can promote NS editors now effectively. Absolutely. Yeah, no, 100%, man. You got it. Yeah, I'll make that happen. I enjoyed being on the show. Matters Now. It's with Ozian Talks. Nice guy. We agree on a lot of things, don't agree on some things, but we're able to always have a civil, engaging conversation. He's very, very knowledgeable, very well read on a lot of things. And so, yeah, and modern day debates can be help promote a little bit too, so that's good too. Modern day debate, James, he's been very kind to give me some shouts out and let people know that I'm trying to get back in the scene, because I feel better and I miss it, and I feel like I have at least some obligation, at least try again. I mean, there's been so much effort to get my channels and the Non Sequitur show going that it's just, I feel like I just can't give up doing what I want to do, because I do enjoy it when there's something interesting. Yeah, Ozian is great. Yeah, I like Ozian. Yeah. I've known Ozian a long time. Was it you that introduced us, Shane? If it is, I mean, I thank you for it, but I honestly don't remember. But again, people know I don't have the same memory as I used to have. I will tell you, I'm definitely not the same person I was 5 years ago, 6, 7, 8 years ago, as far as my faculties. Not the same, and it shows. But I was always on point, at least during the debate. So I felt like my old self. I thought that was like my old me. But I've been doing these shorts for the Non Sequitur show, and I'm going back and finding some interesting clips from some of the older, more popular episodes. And man, I was watching it going, man, this was good. This was good. We had some good shows. We had some good dumpster fires. Ain't gonna front. It was enjoyable. And I'm remembering certain clips. I'm like, oh yeah, dude, I remember that. And other times I'm like, I don't even remember saying that, but man, that was good, or somebody else, right? So, um, I definitely not that's mentally. I'm not the same as I was that far ago. Oh, we got Brandon in here. Hello, Brandon. Hello. I I can hear you. Wait. Okay, now you go. There you go.
Come on, come back.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Wait.
Shit.
Wait. Come back. Come back. Oh, well, he's gonna come back. Um, see if he fixed this thing there. It was fixed there, but oh well. Anyways, like I said, I do want to talk about more about the theist tonight because I'm seeing this new crop of theist debaters coming along, and they are very much reminiscent of the debate me bros, the old atheist lack of belief community. And it does remind me a little bit. If you go way back when, to probably it started, I'm guessing, 2011, give or take, and started hitting its peak around maybe 2013, when you had like Shock of God, right? And you had like, oh, here's Shane. Shane, remember? Shane, you remember back in the day, you know, 2010, 11, 12, 13, somewhere in the ballpark. You had people like Shock of God, and you had all of these theists that had the most ludicrously bad arguments. And atheists at the time just didn't really know how to respond to them. And so they responded in kind with equally bad arguments. And then you had myself and other people going around going, look, all your arguments suck. Let's explain why. Right? Does that remember? Do you remember those days? Does that ring a bell? Shane? What is going on here? Shane? I see you, sort of. I swear, people, there are people in here. I'm not hallucinating. I'm not schizophrenic. There is people in here. I'm telling you. But why can't I hear him? Type in something if you can hear me. Didn't I have the same problem before that I couldn't hear people, or they couldn't hear me? I think it was. No, because I could hear Brandon just fine. You're muted. Oh, you're muted. That's why. You have to unmute yourself, Shane. There we go. No, I still can't hear you. What is going on here? Oh, private chat. Okay. Okay, you're working on it. Okay. So, anyways, do you guys remember that though? Do you guys remember the Shock of God? I mean, what was his terrible? I mean, his first terrible argument was something along the lines of, um, atheism can't prove that God doesn't exist, or something, or what was it? What was that? I think that was his main argument or something. It was really stupid. That atheists, can't prove there's no God. Something along those lines. But anyways, we're getting back to those days where these atheists are new atheists are coming, or excuse me, new theists. I'm so used to talking about atheists, right? New theists are coming on the scene where they're starting from that very base level position, that very entry level fruit on the ground position. And you would think that we've come a long way in a decade. I mean, I don't expect every debate to be high level. I mean, you want high level debates. Yeah, modern debate has high level debates. Obviously, you have Destiny, you have Vosh, you have the whatever podcast. Those are going to be some high level debates. You can't really go into those debates not knowing something about a topic, because you will get utterly, utterly wrecked. I just, you at least have to have some wherewithal about you to recognize that your limitations, right? I wouldn't even go on some of those shows, right? I mean, I'm no match for any of them when it comes to politics. I'd be decimated, absolutely wrecked. If we wanted to talk a little bit more about philosophy, then I at least may be able to hold my own. If we want to talk specifically about atheism, then yeah, I'd probably do okay, or Gnosticism. Shane, you want to try again? Did you fix? Nope. Making me nervous that it's on my end. You say it's on your end, but I don't know. But anyways, so the new crop of theists are out there, and they're just running the same old prats, point refuted 1,000 times. The things that go back. I mean, do you remember back when we had George Lujak on? Remember Furious George? And he had a debate with Aaron Raw, and he was just the king, all-time king of the world's worst argumentations. Every prat you possibly could imagine. And Aaron had told him, look, if you had read my books on the foundational falsehoods of creationism, you would have not really argued any of these, because they're all explained. And Aaron, of course, was right on this. But of course, George just ran with him. And now I got to tell you, I've reached out to George. He has done some shows in the last year. He did a show with T Jump, actually, believe it or not, about a year ago. But I'm going to have him back on eventually. Like I said, I've reached out to him. He's going to come back on, and we're going to see where he stands 4 years later. Ain't that going to be fun? Because man, his arguments were bad. But I'm seeing the same thing, right? We're seeing, and maybe I'm being too judgmental. Maybe I'm being unfair. Maybe that every theist and even atheist that come into the debate scene has to start somewhere, and I get that, right? They'll run some of the older arguments that most people start off with when they're first entering these domains of discourse and dialectics, and people go, you think evolution says that man evolved from grass or something? That's one of the ones that had come up, or that the old dogs produce dogs kind of thing, right? Things we've heard a million times. Hi, Sarah. How are you, my darling? I hope you're doing well. Already shilling for Biden and Harris, I see. Good for you, I think. I don't know. I'm not voting. I don't know. I don't want any of them. I really want them just to get rid of every politician and start from scratch. I can't deal with it. But anyways, hi, Sarah. The link is in the above. You want to join. I know you never do. Well, you haven't in years. But if you'd like to, come on in. You don't even have to get all dolled up and prettied as normal, because I'm not even doing any camera work today. Just voice today. But I mean, am I being too hard on him? Because, like, for example, when Rob came into the non sequitur show to do his debate against me, okay, people have criticized Steve. You're kind of going for low hanging fruit. Okay, but I'm weaning myself in, to be fair. And so, and I thought, it wasn't like a dumpster fire. Just, it wasn't anything new I haven't heard before. It wasn't anything of interest. But, I don't expect people to be on the caliber where they're going to go debate, Alex Malpass or William M. Craig. Very few people I know that are not professionals can ever reach that level. There's very few. David Paulman is very good. Emerson Green's very good. Jackson Wheat, absolutely. So there's a lot of people, but they still have educations, right? They're not like any of them uneducated. So they could at least hold their own on some of the basic stuff when you get to these advanced apologetics out there. And so when we're debating these theists, what is it that we should be looking for when we debate somebody who starts off with the most simplest of prats? Is it to debate them or educate them? Now, I took the approach I was going to educate. There was no debate to be had. We all know, look, evolution is not debatable. It happens. It's been happening for billions of years. This is not a debatable thing in science, okay? It's just not. It's long established factual. If anybody thinks they can refute that, nobody's stopping them. But I can tell you right here, I guarantee that that is the least theory to ever be overturned. The theory of relativity will be overturned way more easily than the theory of evolution, because it is such a confirmed model. There's so much evidence for it. It is mind-blowing. But what happens is these theists, these creationists, don't bother to go look at it. And when they do, all they really do is they go read something that some young earth creationist site says, and they parrot it word for word. Not that they understand it. Now, there are some young earth creationists that do understand it. Remember that one guy, Sal? He understood. He was good. Now, do I think he twisted things? Sure, of course. He's a creationist. All right, Shane's back. Now, I can hear you. Well, I heard something. Shane. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Shane. Okay, now he can't hear me, but I can hear him. Me try come back in. 1 second. I'm just going to re-enter the StreamYards. Okay, now can you hear me? Is this on my end? Because I can do meets if you need to. I don't have to do StreamYards, but I don't know if you can hear. I heard him there for a second. I think one or two other people have a problem with StreamYards. No, there. Yes, I can hear you.
Mic test.
Hello.
Mic test.
Yes, can you hear me?
Am I working? Can you hear me now? I was about to freak out. See it working. Hello. All right.
Oh, you can hear me,
I can
Shane.
hear you.
Awesome. How you
I hear
been?
you.
Oh my God, is this weird? You're on the
Wait a sec. Actually, now I
yeah,
can't hear you through StreamYard.
you're on the YouTube channel. You know what? Let me just get a meet. I'll get a meet.
Oh,
It's so much
wait.
simpler. I
Uh,
got this. Yeah, let me
yeah,
just get a
that
meet.
should be working
Give me
fine.
1 second. All right. Since we're not going on camera anyways, it doesn't really matter. Just there's a time limit on these, so that's why. But I don't expect to go long anyway. So, all right. So there we go. Try that one. All right. Wait for him to get back in here. Then I want to ask him some questions. But I'll continue where I left off until he gets in here. I can see when he comes in. But yeah, so I took the debate on the non sequitur. Is this? Can you guys hear me? Wait, I'll make sure it's working. Can you hear me, Shane? Can you hear me? Hello. Hello. Try now. Can you hear me? Hello. 1 second. All right. Can you hear me? Because I can't hear you. All right. If we figure it out,
Yeah, I can hear
yay!
you.
Awesome, Mundo. All right. So left the out. I just have the outside. No, or ask them. Can you guys hear both of us now?
That was weird. When I came back the second time, Chemo said they could hear me in the YouTube, but you
Yeah,
couldn't hear me
it's
for
something
some
with
reason.
StreamYards. I've had
That
issues
was
with it
weird.
before. That's why I said screw it. Let's go to Meet. So, anyways, yeah. First of all, like, how are you? How you been?
Great.
I just
Good. Good.
I just
Good.
hung out
Just
with you. So
busy
it wasn't very
boy.
long ago. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah. Sorry, I came so
no
late.
worries.
I was fucking running errands all day, and I wanted to make the debate,
Oh,
but I
I
wasn't
got to
able
ask you about
to.
something too, but I'm gonna pin it for a second. Remind me, and I'll bring it back up. But I wanted to ask you: do you remember back about 10 years ago, 13 years ago? It had to be around 2011, give or take. It probably got big around 2013, when you had all these theists calling into the atheist experience. One of them was Shock of God. You had Armor of God. You had what were some other names? Nephilim Free. But all of them,
Yeah, Nephilim Free, I
yeah.
remember for sure, and Shock of God rings a bell.
Jared's like, you're a nuke. You haven't tech. You know what? Nukes are known for that kind of stuff. Jared, you should know this by now. There's an expression: "Don't nuke it up for a reason." Okay, that expression exists, and I didn't come up with it. There's that for a reason, because we tend to overcomplicate things. Um, but but yeah. So I'm seeing a lot of these new, you know, debaters, these theist debaters, come on the scene, and they're just running the same stuff, the same presuppositionalist the argumentation that we destroyed years ago. I mean, there are not very many. Don't get me wrong, but they're still holding on to this bizarre, hope that presuppositional apologetics and younger creationism prats from Ian Juby or Nephilim Free are still viable when they simply haven't been for. Well, they never were, but I mean, I think we've thoroughly destroyed them over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I don't. So I want to know is have you noticed that they're more like the debate me bros from the atheists from years ago? Because I'm not impressed so far, man. I'm not impressed with the new theist.
Yeah, it's recycled rhetoric.
But why? Whatever. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Christians that really do know their stuff, right? I mean, yeah, I mean, inspiring philosophy I
Sure.
like. Captain Christianity knows his stuff. He is a bit of a troll, but he likes to poke the bear, but he knows his stuff. Dr. Braston Hunter's a nice guy. Dr. Jonathan Pritchard's a nice guy.
How about like G-Man?
I will tell you this, man. I will tell you this. I'm not giving anything away because G-Man knows people know this. He thinks it's funny that they don't know it or they don't accept it even though they know it. G-Man is a character. He, yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, no
he
shit.
believes this. Don't be wrong. I'm not saying he doesn't believe what he believes, but he puts on a show for people. He likes to push the buttons because, and he'll ask people like, how far GMAD do you want to go? You know, because he's a character to him. Although yes, he does believe it. I mean, he is a Christian, and yes, he believes the Earth is young, but
Well, you can do both things, believe the things and then become a character for the entertainment
right. His
value of it
arguments
or
he knows
whatever.
are bad. He does it to piss people off. He's good at sophistry, though. I mean, well, okay, not that good at sophistry. He's good at he,
I haven't seen him on
he's
in a
just good at
long
button
time.
pushing.
I haven't.
Oh,
I don't know
he's
what
around.
happened to him.
He's been around. I haven't talked to him for a long while, but he's been around.
How did the debate go with
Uh,
Rob?
on
Like
my channel. I
anything
mean, on the Non
fruitful?
Sequitur show. Yeah, I thought it was good. I
Yeah.
thought I did pretty well. I was pretty confident, of course, and I went to the debate with the expectation of educating rather than win the debate. Because whenever I see people trying to win the debate, they just not focus on the actual helping the other person understand the material. Right? I already knew Rob wasn't going to be able to understand most of what I was talking about. Okay. Now he gets pushback for that, but I'm sorry, but if you're going to go into a channel predominantly known for philosophy and basic logic, and you don't know what the law of identity is, it's going to be very problematic that you're going to have any solid arguments, right? Because you're going into a channel where there's an expectation of certain minimums. Like if I go to a biology channel and I don't know what DNA is, there's probably going to be a problem, right? I at least have some expectation that I know what a DNA maybe is comprised of. Maybe that's even asking for too much. I don't know, but I mean, there's certain basic things, especially if you're going to be talking about macroevolution, I'll ask them, like, do you know what gene flow is? Do you know what genetic drift is? Do you know what sympatric speciation as opposed to allopatric? Again, I find this to be all intro to biology stuff, and so it's not for like the people with advanced degrees. It's for, okay, if you're going to go into these discussions and you're going to tell me macroevolution doesn't exist, and you don't know what speciation even is, then how are you going to fare against somebody like Aaron Ra, who's intimately familiar with a lot of those concepts, right?
Right. Very. Oh yeah, I got to meet Aaron too, man. Fucking what a character.
Yeah,
I
I never
was
met him,
happy to get to
in
meet
real
him.
life, only online. He was on the Non Sequitur show, I think probably 24 times, give or take. Um, but it's a shame. I really wish I would have, because I think we would have got along, just swell in real life. We would have been, yeah.
Oh, I think
Oh man,
so.
I mean, we used
I
to
think
laugh so
so.
much on the Non Sequitur show, man. We would rip each other just so hard, and it was fun. It was really a good time. I like his sense of humor. I
I had a shirt on that said, "I love the sound you make when you shut the fuck up, man." He about doubled over in laughter. He's like, "I fucking
that
love
see
everything about
that's
that right
definitely
there."
Aaron's sense of humor. Hell, that's my sense of humor too, right? You know.
Yeah. I told him, I was like, I figured you'd like this shirt, just you as knowing
Yeah.
him,
And it
his
was that
humor and
because you were
whatnot.
running something with MDD?
Yeah, I went out there and helped
How
just help do the
how do they
help run
arrange all
the
that? That must be
debate
a lot of
con.
moving parts. And
Oh my god,
who pays
the
for all that
logistics
stuff?
are a nightmare.
Each individual person, or
I mean, James does. James, and he just takes it
he pay
um
he pays for all those
right out of the
people?
funds from the channel. Oh, no, 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 no. Some people, ask a fee. Others do it just to
Publicity. Yeah.
get
Wait,
their name
does
out
Matt
there and
charge a fee?
whatnot.
Yeah, yeah, of course he did. Yeah, I remember because
What
he
do you
asked for it
think?
back on the Andrew. Yeah, I remember that because when he walked down on Andrew, they was talking about the fee, right? Remember that? You were
Dude, I
there, weren't you?
couldn't
Were you there?
believe that
Yeah,
Andrew
you're there.
said,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I was there. James
yeah.
flew me out there for the damn thing, just kind of as a thank you for helping out all these years. But like Andrew, Andrew had that
Oh,
planned out. I'll
I
tell
believe
you
that.
that
No,
much
I believe very
because
much that Andrew knew he was going to go in to push Matt's buttons.
oh, not just that. I mean, we had a nice conversation. Like all that aside, like that morning, he hung out for about an hour, helped me set some shit up. We had a nice conversation. But he was like, he said the last thing he said to me was, "I have a feeling this is going to be the last time I'll ever be on MDD," and that stuck with me
Was
right
it was
up
that
until
Andrew
it
that said
made
that?
sense about
Yeah. Well,
yeah, but then about 4 hours later,
he's
6
gonna be.
hours later, I was like,
He's gonna be on non
"Oh,
sequitur on Sunday,
okay.
right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
so anyways, real quick, we got a guest in here, Christian Idealism. Hey, Christian Idealism, how how you
Hello.
been?
Hello,
Hello,
Christian."
Steve. Good. You probably know me, Steve. I'm Kyle Allender.
Oh,
So
Kyle, of
we're friends
course.
on
Yeah,
Facebook.
yeah, of course I do. Yeah, you actually know your stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I
I
kind
love
of
your
have
stuff.
to.
I
I'm
love
a
your
philosophy
stuff.
undergrad.
Wow,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm kind of
Well, I hope I
forced
didn't
into this
dox you
shit.
by that by giving your screen name. No, actually, you put that out. Okay.
No, you're good.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I don't think. Yeah, I don't think we've ever actually been in a hangout, have we? Maybe a long time ago.
Not
Maybe
for a
like in the
while.
non
No.
sequitur show days. I think so. I think. But
Not.
anyways, yeah. No.
I
Anyways,
don't know. I
but
can't remember.
I do love your post. You get very philosophical, and then unfortunately, see, you and I agree apparently on a lot of things on philosophy, but I look at it from a non-believer position. You look at it from a believer position, and people have a hard time reconciling that.
Yeah. I mean, it is like if you go into philosophy, academic, like even at the highest level, there are disagreements, but like we can all respect each other. And it's just totally different in the academic realm versus like the online realm. But that's just the
Well, I try
nature
to
of
explain to people that
the
though, right? I
internet.
mean, people ask me, "Hey,
So,
Steve, why are you so fastidious in your terminology? Why do you promote academic usages in philosophy?" I'm like, because if people wanted to go learn these things, they want to go read a paper on it. If they use their own stipulative usages, and the paper's not going to make a damn bit of sense to them. It's hard enough wading through the literature trying to figure out what this person means by objective or subjective or empirical or even idealism versus realism. Those words mean vastly different things to vastly different people, even in academics.
yeah, I mean, you kind of have to treat it like its own science in a way because if you watch it, I mean, it's interesting because like we have a science channel, we have a history channel, but we don't have a philosophy channel. Is interesting. So the wider culture just doesn't understand philosophy as much as like these other subjects because it's
So why
just
is
not
that though? Like, why is
popularized
it that,
enough.
like I was telling Shane here, the new crop of theists that are becoming on the scene wanted to debate, and that's great. I think that anybody should get into these things, and it's not easy to start, and you're going to get your ass handed to you probably your first few times. Um, but they're running the same just overwrought arguments that have been, and I mean thoroughly debunked, not just we disagree, but I mean just absolutely eviscerated by both Christians and by non-believers. I mean, I'm sure would never tell a Christian, "Hey, go into that hangout and go run the argument. Hey, if we evolved from monkeys, why are there still monkeys?" Right? It's so bad. But I see
Yeah,
creationists pretty well running very similar arguments, and there are much level high. Okay, they're not too high level, but there are higher level arguments for creationism out there that need a little bit more understanding. I mean, especially like dealing with maybe like human chromosome 2. Yeah, you're going to probably have to know a little bit more about genetics to really get into that argument. But they're not even trying for anything like that. They're just simply, things have their own kind. I mean, this is antiquated type stuff here that I'm seeing, and I don't know why they're so emphatic of thinking that that's going to be able to take on these higher level debaters, these higher level people on YouTube that do it professionally, pretty much like Matt Dillahunty. They would just get just eviscerated. There's no other word to say it because, Matt's been around for a long time. Like him, don't like him, it doesn't matter. I think he's an egotist and a narcissist, but I mean, he knows his Bible. He may suck at philosophy, but he knows his Bible, you know, and even in basic evolution,
yeah.
he's pretty knowledgeable on that. That was my rant.
Well, I mean, if you're dealing with creationists, I mean, you kind of
Well,
have to be. So You kind of have to know your
Well, you know,
stuff.
okay. So here's the thing, though. I don't like getting into theological debates, right? If you and I were to debate about the existence of God, it would be very superficial. Why? Because I'm not a theologian. I don't have the biblical knowledge
Yeah.
to tell you what happened at one passage. I mean, sure, can I give you a general overview of what the Bible says? Sure, most people can. But you know, when Paul met Peter, that had dinner with John, that wrote this and that, I have no freaking idea. No idea. I just remember the Synoptic Gospels, and that's about it.
No, yeah, I think it depends, but generally, I mean, most, especially online, um, atheists kind of go off this fundamentalist reading of the text, and it's very like, I mean, I understand who they're going after, but at the same time, it's like you could make your points more explicit. Say, hey, I'm going after one particular group of Christians that interpret it this way. If you have a different interpretation, then you can go with it,
But don't
right? So
don't
it just, I think it
Christians do that
depends.
like on everything? I mean, they will argue. I mean, everything from preterism to the Trinity, to the Eucharist, to baptism, to what is it, the one that's been coming out recently? I've seen election. Whether God has predetermined people to exist or not. What is it? What do the Calvinists call that? What,
Yeah, that's,
yeah, but there's
I
another
think
name
it's
they call for it.
predestination.
It's there's like
Yeah.
irresistible grace, and there's something. I think is it irresistible grace. It could be. I don't know. It's one of the tulip things. But basically, they're saying, hey, look, either God picks you or God doesn't pick you, and that's already predetermined, right? Right, which makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's based upon one specific passage in the Bible that they just run with. But that's what I see with most of Christianity nowadays. People just pick and choose what they seem to like and what they don't like, and what makes sense to them. But I couldn't ever have a debate on any of those topics relating to the actual theology of Christianity. It just would nothing that I could be interested in. And I don't see a point to it because it doesn't go anywhere. Because again, I do debates to help explain something to someone, but those debates aren't to explain. They're to convince somebody that the other person's position on God is wrong. And it's basically just on because of
Yeah.
interpretation. Like you're let me get, I mean, if I remember, are you Baptist or Roman Catholic? Roman Catholic. Okay,
No, I'm a Roman
it's
Catholic.
one of the big ones. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, as a Roman Catholic, I do have at least somewhat of an advantage because I have the church to, you know, kind of constrain what I'm allowed to believe, what I'm not. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's less flexibility in my position, but like, if there's a Protestant, they have much more flexibility in what they can hold to than I do. Um,
Yeah, you also have the advantage of. I
so
mean,
yeah,
one thing about the Catholic Church, I will give them that they have a lot of history. They have a lot of doctrine, right? And so people that want to learn about the Catholic Church, you
oh
got a
yeah,
long ways to go, right? So they actually have to force themselves to actually study and learn, read that stuff, right? Because you ask the average non-Catholic, they're not going to know about the details. I mean, honestly, do you think? Look, I'm not saying that I know about these things. I don't think. Okay, but I'm just of them.
yeah,
But if you went to the average person, you asked them the difference between sola scriptura or sola fideis, or or
yeah.
right,
No,
or
you're not gonna
if
get a
you ask them anything
response.
about the catechism, if you ask them anything about the Eucharist, if you ask them anything of, I mean, what's a good one? When Christ is himself, kind of homostasis? No, not yeah, homostasis, isn't it? I know they got again. Catholics all these
One of those. Yeah.
weird terms and stuff like that, but they have to learn their entire like different language when you're becoming a Roman Catholic. It takes years of schooling. So when those Roman Catholics go against somebody in a debate, they're almost certainly going to know a little bit more about the topics. So I respect that. I do.
Yeah. Although, I mean, it depends on who you're talking to. I mean, obviously, if you're talking to like a Catholic apologist like Trent Horn or Jimmy
Trent's
Akin,
very
then they're
yeah.
going to know a
Trent's
lot more than your
I
average
have Trent
person.
on I think I have him on Facebook too. I know I got him on Twitter. But Trent's knowledgeable. I mean, this is why I like watching those debates where you have somebody like Trent or you have somebody like White, James White, who I again don't agree with, but they're at least going to put forth something of educational value. Yeah, I agree with that. But when you have the lower level debaters out there, they're just simply not trying to educate. They're just trying to win debates, and that's not how you go into debate. I don't think. I think the sophistry is just too much because, look, if you go into debate and you're not trying to convince your opponent based upon solid argumentation and facts, and you're just trying to placate to the audience, then all you're really doing is just feeding your ego at that point. I mean, and that's what I think William Lane Craig does. He's not there to show his opponent that he's wrong, or even the audience that his opponent is wrong. What William Lane Craig is there for is to make a show for the audience and just to win the debate. That's it. And Destiny is kind of the same way. Destiny just wants to win debates. I don't think he actually even cares whether he believes what he believes. Sometimes I've heard him argue some silly things just to win a debate.
I won't speak much on Craig just because he is one of those people that I have mixed feelings about.
Well, who's your favorite apologist then?
Yeah. Favorite apologist? That's a good question. I mean, what do you mean? I can name who my favorite philosopher would be.
That's fine. That's fine too.
Like my favorite apologist my favorite philosopher would be Richard Swinburne.
And respect, right? I mean,
yeah.
Swinburne is genius. I mean, he is. I will agree. He's probably one of the best theologian philosophers of the modern day. But doesn't mean I completely accept his arguments, but his arguments are formidable. I've read his work on logically narrow contingent God, right? And it is not an easy read, dude. You're familiar with it, obviously. I know.
True.
And so, I would say that Swinburne is very, very good. But as a non-believer, I got to go with Oppie, obviously. I think Oppie is just amazing, and I think Oppie and Swinburne have gone back and forth on various things. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, they did debate.
Yeah, that's two titans right there. I gotta watch that again. I know of it. I know I've watched it, and if I remember correctly, I came out of it thinking it was a stalemate because you got two elite here arguing something. It's just they both make good points, kind of thing, right? Neither one of them is slumming.
Well, I think. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to them, I think they use different methodologies for doing the worldview comparisons. Like Swinburne is more of is using more of a Bayesian system, whereas Oppie is doing more of a axiomatization comparison, and those are not the same way to look at it.
I would say that Oppie does use some probabilities. I don't think it would be Bayesian analysis, but he does, argue that if something is not parsimonious with theoretical virtues, that it probably is more likely not to be the case, which is a probability argument. It's not a Bayesian argument, but it's still, probabilistic. Because he argues that we can at least observe natural phenomenon and explain it by natural phenomenon. And Shane, you've been awfully quiet. You okay over there? All right.
Yeah, I'm all right.
By the way, this would have made a good podcast episode when we just don't have any cameras, just strictly voice. I don't want to get back in the podcasting though, but yeah. So Oppie definitely runs the argument that naturalism is more parsimonious. Oppie runs the argument that naturalism is more in line with what we see, and that's a good argument for atheists to be running against theists. But they never seem to be able to articulate it very well. At least I'm talking about the low-level debaters.
Yeah. I mean, it is this interesting phenomena where like both sides don't really know the best of their own side.
It really is. They don't because you know why? Because they don't bother to steel man the other side.
Yeah.
Like I'll admit one of my initial faux pas when I first arrived on the scene. Again, we all learn, right? We all have to go this learning process. You can't just all of a sudden get into these topics and think that you understand any of them, because some of them are so freaking complicated that you may never understand them. But when I first got on the scene, I was looking at the fine-tuning argument, right? And of course, I went with the whole, puddle, water, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, argumentation, right? From what's his name? Yeah.
Those kind of objections.
What's so funny is that superficially, they seem to make sense superficially. And I can understand why people would argue that. But when you really look at the actual fine tuning argument, and Luke Barnes does a brilliant job of breaking it down, and he's a theist, and Alex Mappas is really good at discussing that. It's actually a lot more complicated than I had given it credit for. And I really used to think that the fine tuning was one of the easiest to defeat. Now I think it's actually one of the more difficult ones along with the modal ontological argument.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to understand the fine-tuning argument, you really have to understand how epicenter probability works.
Right.
Like
I
that's
agree.
critical. And like most people, of
Yeah,
course,
no, I
don't
agree. It's
understand that.
it's super
So,
based upon actual probabilities, and also you have to know a little bit about physics too. You have to understand how the fundamental constants interrelate with each other, and how what a narrow band of range we would have that if the fine structure fine structure oh my, see, this is what I'm saying here. I'm not the same anymore. Fine structure constant was changed, how minimally even it would affect even the combination of hydrogen atoms from the proton to the electrons to form, how the Coulomb barrier would change, how the speed of light would change, how permittivity and permissivity would change. All these natural things would change even with a very small, it's just a small band that we have. It's really remarkable. Now people have argued, because we exist because of the conditions the way they are, but the fact is that the conditions are the way they are, such that we have the ability to not just be in that band, but be able to apprehend that we are in that band from a anthropological point of view. And I find that to be really remarkable.
yeah.
A lot of people think that I'm off on that, at least in the atheist community, but most of the philosophers and the theists both agree it's nothing to be just shoved under the water. There's a lot more to the fine-tuning argument than I think a lot of people give credit for. Correct me if I'm wrong. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think you're spot on. I mean, I do think the fine-tuning argument works, but only if you formulate it in a specific way. And of course, it's one piece of data point, right? So I think,
yeah, I agree.
By
It's not
itself,
convincing. Yeah, it's not convincing. It's one
there's a
piece of
question.
data. I agree, and that's I even tell atheists, look,
Yeah.
there's no one knock it out of the park atheist argument, right? It's a holistic approach. You take a bunch of arguments, you throw them together, and I think the theists would do
Well,
the same thing for their side.
I mean, one way to think about this is like, take for example, let's take evolution as an example. Like, it's not going to be one piece of evidence that's going to convince you of evolution. It's going to take
Correct.
multiple pieces of evidence, right? And so you need this system of evidence in order to have justification and a hypothesis. I think the same thing works for the naturalism and theism debate, where it's going to be system against system and
Right.
trying to do
No, I agree.
comparisons that
No, I
way.
think it's one data point, and I really do think that Luke Barnes
Yeah.
really explains it super well. But he's also a PhD in astrophysics, so so he has the ability to do so.
Yeah, that's true.
Again, a lot of the debaters going into these discussions think they know things about these topics they don't actually know. I could never go against Luke Barnes. I'd look like a blooming idiot. But I can look at his argument and at least go, okay, based on what I do know about physics and Planck's constant and things of that nature, he is correct on that. And I don't know any physicist that would probably tell him he's wrong. Matter of fact, that's really the reason why a lot of the multiverse theory has been created, that will satisfy the conditions to why we are in that very narrow band for the fine-tuning argument. So the multiverse presents its own problems, right? But even secular physicists, even secular scientists and theologians and physicists and philosophers, all of them all agree that, hey, look, multiverse is a way of explaining the fine-tuning problem, but it just creates some of the other problems. But at least it proves that fine-tuning is something that requires a very coherent theory to explain away. Does that make sense? I mean, they don't just sweep it under the rug. They're like, well, okay, there is a problem here. Anybody who's really looked at the fine-tuning problem recognizes there's a problem. Let's see how we can try to resolve that problem. And that's early on, I failed to recognize that because it's just something I hadn't really looked at yet, right? So,
I mean, there's a lot of literature on the fine-tuning argument, and it'll take a lifetime to try to get through all the points for and against what it has to say. But
Shane, you want anything on that?
No.
Do
Go
you
ahead.
think do you agree with this?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I'm not in any disagreements with that.
But yeah, that's what I like to see, though. I mean, I like to see those higher level discussions. Um, and again, the new crop of theists are just coming on, just debate me. Um, and I just don't see the point. I don't see the point of having these theological discussions unless they're just for fun, not as a debate. For fun, that's fine, right? If you want to sandbox it and you want to come in, Kyle, and say, hey, let's talk about, the resurrection. Let's talk about, the properties of God. Oh, I could do that. I'm certainly not versed in them by any means, but I could discuss it. Wouldn't be my foremost thing to do, but it wouldn't be something that would be, alienable to me. I wouldn't like eschew it and go, oh no, I don't want to talk about that unless I'm not in the mood for it, right? But that's because you and I have a rapport, and I'm like, no, I know you're not coming in trolling just to go, Jesus, Jesus, died for your sins, and if you don't believe it, you're going to hell. Because I'll be like, yeah, wasting my time, right? You're on that. You're on a very high level.
Agree.
I mean, are you working on your master's?
No, right now I'm just doing undergraduate because I still need to get my bachelor's, and then I'm gonna go into teaching. Hopefully, I'll get my master's eventually, but just not.
Do you ever get annoyed? Because I see it on your Facebook. Do you ever get annoyed when you say something and I'll read it and I go, yeah, dude, spot on about that. I mean, let's say this thing about idealism or physicalism or materialism, non-reductive physicalism, philosophy of mind, whatever it is that you're talking about for the day. And I'll be like, okay, that's an interesting point, blah, blah. And you have people in your comment section just eviscerate you, and you clearly can see they don't even know what any of those things even mean. You ask them what source oh my God, I'm dying today. Source physicalism is, they'd be like, what? And by the way, and I do tend to source physicalism, by the way. And I'm still working out, and I believe it is possible, source physicalism with objective morality. They tend to butt heads a little bit, but there is ways of, I think, of dovetailing them together.
It depends on what your view is.
Right. It's all contingent upon moral
properties.
And if things are reducible to naturalistic properties of the universe rather than non-natural, because that's what it's going to be for an objective facts of the universe. So I think there's a lot to be had there. But you ever get bothered when you just have comments going like, yeah, you're just an idiot, and they just assume because you're a Christian you're just making this stuff up, when I'm like, this is what he just said is normative in philosophy. This is something that's not even argued about. It's just telling you how it's how it's looked at, and then you can have your argument for something. But when you just tell something that I find to be just normal stuff, you get crapped on.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't dug in too deep into the meta-ethics literature, because I mean, there are certain. I think if I were an atheist, I would say that, or like, let's say if I were, let's just take a source physicalism view, I would say that moral properties are emergent phenomena.
So you're talking of as a reductionist, but would that be reductionist?
In some sense, yeah. I mean, maybe it might be a reductionist, but I would just say they're emergent properties.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't particularly disagree with that. The problem is, however, there really seems to be no set standard whether that is something that reduced to natural facts or properties of the universe or non-natural. I've seen them used. I've seen things that I go, yeah, that's more non-naturalism, and they take it as naturalism. Or I see things as moral naturalism, like, oh no, that's ethical non-naturalism. And it's like, okay, I'm confused here because I've seen them used different ways between different authors.
It would depend on your view, I think, of whether you want to take a naturalist approach to metaethics or not. I mean, even like certain, like, I hold to natural law theory, so like I think that moral properties are natural.
Yes, and I hold more to moral non-naturalism, but I still think they're natural properties, and so I don't look at it as theological, though.
No, yeah,
and so mean, there are these types of different positions. Your position and my position are out there, right? They're not. They're and so it's not like we're just making stuff up. They're just very specific views that that people pick. Because again, it depends what you mean by certain things.
Well, it's interesting. There's actually a I think it's called contractualist there is, and it's very interesting because I won't mention his name, but one of my professors at my college, he argues that the biblical God, the Old Testament specifically, is actually a contractualist
I was talking about
account
like
of
Scalion's view.
morality. So like,
Yeah,
I think so. I can't remember. I mean, it was a kind of contractualism because the
right,
whole
right,
idea is
right.
like God
Yeah,
made a
and well,
covenant with
Scallion
Israel,
wrote
right?
the yeah,
So
Scallion
that
wrote
is
the
a
book
form of
of what we owe to
contractualism,
each other.
right?
Yeah, yeah. That of course, yeah, that is
Yeah.
contractualism. There's no question about that, and that is part of moral theory. Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. It's so funny too when I get in. Okay, moral theory. Okay, so let me just put this out there. In philosophy, in my view, philosophy of mind is the most difficult. Moral theory is the second most difficult. And yeah,
Oh, interesting. I actually think philosophy of language is
really
most difficult, but
I like I mean I like speech act theory. I like philosophy of language.
okay. Maybe it's just because I haven't looked into
I
it.
find
But
philosophy of mind to be so confusing sometimes. And also possible world theory is very confusing, but that deals with mathematics, so that doesn't count. But I'm just talking as a whole.
Yeah.
The terminology and the positions in philosophy of mind are so convoluted and so difficult to wrap your head around. It's a pun intended, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I might be lucky because that's how I started off in philosophy when I first started really studying it from an academic perspective. One of the very first books I got was David
Yeah, and I
Chalmers'
mean he's one of
book,
the
The
you know
Conscious
foremost
Mind, and
experts. I mean he's brilliant.
yeah,
You know, matter of fact,
I started reading his work, and then I started getting deeper, and like there's so much
he
terminology.
tends
It's
to
freaking
source
crazy.
physicalism, doesn't he?
I don't know what his view is. I think I don't think he's a panpsychist. I know he's leaning
Well,
towards something like
there's
that,
another one
but
out there, not panpsychism, but
I
there's
don't.
another one panpsychism or something, panentheism,
And
panentheism or
I
something.
think it's like no, not that. It's pan protopsychism or
I've
something
seen something on it, and
like that. I don't.
yeah, okay, I'm gonna get canceled here, but what little I've read on some of the psychism type stuff, it's not that bad. And I know people are gonna be like, "Oh my God, Steve's jumped the sharp and got woo woo." No, hear me out here, people. Hear me out before you cancel me again for the 30th time that I've been on YouTube. Hear me out. I don't subscribe to panpsychism. However, if panpsychism was true, it would alleviate some of the major problems in philosophy of mind. It would definitely make sense if you thought about thought as something that is quantifiable, that each particular matter has some unit of measurement of consciousness. It doesn't mean that the individual unit, it doesn't mean that atoms are consciousness. Although there is a paper out there called Electrons in Love, if you ever read that, which, yeah,
I read that. Yeah, I read that.
you know what's so
times.
funny is I get through most of it, and then towards the end, I'm like, I don't know what he just said. It's very confusing,
Yeah,
right?
no, it's very confusing.
I know I read papers. It's weird. But it's nice to talk to somebody who's actually read those papers too, so they know what I'm talking about. But again, if that is the case, that there is some kind of consciousness that comes from the physical. So in source physicalism, the source is the physical or the material substrate, and from that, minds and consciousness emerge. So the mental states come from the physical state,
Yeah.
and that's pretty much what I hold to. But I do believe there are mental states. There are positions out there, as you well know, that eliminate the mental state. I mean, there's eliminated materialism, which
Eliminated
just
materialism.
says, poop. There is no mental state, and I find that to be throwing away the baby with the bathwater. That just basically says everything we know about mental states is wrong.
I mean, it depends. I haven't read as much of that literature as I have really time for. I think what they're going after is this particular conception of what the mind is. I don't think they're necessarily denying that, like, we have experience. Like, no,
I would think it would be very hard. But I understand.
Yeah.
I think what they're trying to do is eliminate. There's a mental realm. There's a mental state. There's an object. Like if I say that I'm dreaming something, that dream is an object in the consciousness, right? That the dream it doesn't necessarily have kind of ontological presence because it's spatial temporally not existent. But same thing we look at with numbers. Same thing we look at mathematical relationships or platonic forms. They exist in some let's call them realm, for lack of a better word, so we can utilize them in the conversations in science, because even mathematical Platonism is such that if we couldn't use these mathematical constructs, these abstract mathematics in mathematics, then it would not. How do we then justify their use in science if we don't treat them as actual entities? Set theory is actual entities. So I do think I'm fine with Platonism when it comes to that.
Well, one of my professors is actually specializes in the philosophy of mathematics, and he is a full-blown mathematical fictionalist. So yeah, he's like hardcore, like doesn't think he thinks that math is like
a fictionist
like Harry
would say
Potter.
that things that they're useful. Mathematics is a useful tool, but it has no real ontology, or I won't even say ontology, but it has, well, I mean, maybe, but it has, it's like the ideal gas law. The ideal gas law doesn't exist really. There's no such thing as ideal gas. It's a hypothetical, useful fiction. And there's a lot of things in science that are useful fictions. And so I don't take that. I think that's a very strong approach to take fictionalism when it comes to that, even though they are useful. And I think that in a weak sense, sure, I accept fictionalism when it comes to things like perfect circles. What is the Hardy-Weinberg equation for equilibrium? What is that equation for species? Whatever it's called. Ask a biologist. But those are all just ideal situations, right? But they're useful for conversations.
They are. Yeah, I mean, I in my philosophy of science course, because I had him as a professor, well, basically his point was that within science we use math as an idealization. It does not mean that the math actually that's like what actual reality is, right? But rather it's just an idealization of
well, I think that makes sense. Math has no onus to comport with reality. Yeah, and if you look at like the Banach-Tarski paradox, we can see that clearly the math is true, but we're not going to get two basketballs from one. It's just in that case it is fictionalism, and so I can understand his reasoning for that, because again, math doesn't comport to reality. It doesn't have to. Matter of fact, we don't even know if actual infinities can even exist, but we use them all the time in mathematics. So yeah, I got Gary coming in here after his food. I'm
just glad we don't have any crazy Platonists in this group chat.
I'm a mathematical Platonist, which is not the same, obviously. Yeah, with the small p, not big p.
That's what
I'm not a big p. I'm a little p, not a big p. Little p. Quote me there. Yeah. But what's so funny is, again, I could have a conversation with you, and you know exactly what the hell I'm talking about, and my audience does. But you go and watch these discussions where somebody's trying to explain this to these new debaters, and they have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah, I remember King Crocoduck's discussion with what's his name? That guy with a beard.
Max Colby.
I forgot his name.
That dude. I don't want theists to go back that far. They don't need to revert back to Max Colby.
No, yeah. Guy. But I remember their first discussion. They were actually talking about mathematical realism, and like Dean was just
Dean Esme
all over the place about.
Yeah. He's not a good person.
Yeah. I haven't seen him around for a very long time, actually.
Good. I don't want him around. So. Oh, he used to write hip police blogs about me too. Just ridiculous stuff. That dude was just insane. But yeah, why? I mean, do you accept mathematical Platonism, or at least
No, I was actually the reason why I mentioned it, because I agree with Crocoduck on him pushing back against.
So you're a nominalist? Fictionalist, okay.
Yeah, I'm a fictionalist. My professor.
Indoctrination.
Me, yeah.
See this? You send someone to college and they get indoctrinated. You see this? A living example of why you don't send people to college. Homeschool your kids. Just kidding. I'm kidding, people. No. Yeah. And again, what's so funny is whether you pick fictionalism, you pick Platonic realism, or mathematical Platonism, or you pick reductionism, it doesn't really matter if it works for you. There's no. Here's the thing: none of them have a right answer. Yeah. It doesn't. I'm sorry, but you cannot prove reductionism. You cannot prove mathematical Platonism. You can argue that it just makes sense to you philosophically. and that's the best you can do. And I was a nominalist. I now tend to mathematical Platonism because I think it does make sense to argue that they are useful in things like mathematical equations in science. I mean, in physics and things of that nature. So I wouldn't go so far to accept that at least a strong fictionalist point of view. Would your instructor accept more of a moderation between fictionalism and mathematical Platonism just for utility? He's straight.
No, he is totally full blown fiction.
Why?
I'll have to send you his some papers on. That's what he's
known for.
He's writing a book right now on it, but
maybe
I mean, yeah, at least within the field.
Well, it's probably like trying to understand, modal realism from David Lewis. I tried to get into that, dude.
Yeah,
get it, forget it. There's probably 6 people in the world that understand that crap. I even I messaged something to Graham Priest one time, and I had asked him, I'm like, hey, hey, look, if Lewis had argued that possible worlds do exist, ontologically do exist, not just, some useful tool, but if it has some kind of ontology to it, then doesn't God exist? If God exists in some possible world, and those possible worlds do exist, and, you look at the modal ontological arguments like that, wouldn't it necessitate that everybody would be a theist, that there is a God? And he basically said that he didn't know what Lewis would have argued on that, but it would make sense that he probably would say, yeah, there's a God in some possible world that exists, but it wouldn't necessarily go to all possible worlds unless you apply the S5 axiom, and even then, who knows? But
yeah.
That's hard to wrap your head around. I mean, I don't accept modal realism, but his stuff is deep, man. Deep.
No, yeah, I agree.
We went all over the place. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, and
it's a coffee. I love it. It really is, right?
Philosophy,
I mean,
man.
seriously, like I said, people think they're going to jump into these discussions, and it's hard. It's hard. It's hard. I'm tired of the creationists that come around and just, radiometric dating doesn't work. Shut up. You know what? Show me the math. You know how many young Earth creationists has ever said, let me show you the math about radiometric dating, why it doesn't work? I can tell you how many there have been. I'll give you a hint. It's synonymous with zero. Yeah, none,
Yep. I mean, typically they'll just repeat the same arguments that have already been addressed.
Most of them don't even know what a exponential equation even is.
Yeah, and I mean, the biggest problem for them, I would say, is like if they actually studied nuclear physics, then like they shouldn't be.
Well, I agree with you, absolutely. And I did study nuclear atomic physics. Literally, that's what I was trained for in the Navy.
I honestly, I do not know how they try to get around
magic.
That. I remember, I just don't get it because like, I don't know. I'm sure you watched it before, but King Crocott's
I love King Crocott.
video
Been on my show many times.
On the Ken Ham and what's his name, Bill Nye debate. There's one section where it's like he explains this like all this math and stuff. I forgot which isotope it was, but like near the end it was like basically if we're going to put all the math in, then the logical conclusion is that there would be a nuclear reaction 6 times worse or something like that.
What is this? The way it works is this. I've watched what you're talking about, and I am familiar with what he said. So what he said was this, and he's absolutely right. According to creationists, they have some major problems. One, they have to account for millions, if not billions of years of radioactivity. That's called the heat problem. Okay? And so there's no way they've resolved that yet. The only thing they've come up with is something hypothetical called accelerated decay, which they have no evidence for. They've provided no evidence whatsoever. It's completely hypothetical. And if it did exist, it would change some of the fundamental constants, such as the speed of light. Another thing that Jason Lyles will talk about, his asynchronous light transmission argument kind of thing, which is just honestly a philosophical argument. It has no basis in science whatsoever. His asynchronous light is a philosophical argument. And I'm going to get canceled again. Jason Lyles is not wrong in his argument. It's just, who cares? His argument is sophistry. It's a simple philosophical argument that's been known for, time on end. but he's trying to make it sound like it's something new to promote creationism. It doesn't get you to creationism. But is he wrong? No, he's not. We can't measure one way speed of light. Okay, but what Apologetics was saying was this: that if we change the speed of light, because there's a formula, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's 1 divided by the square root of the electric permittivity times the magnetic permissivity, or the other way around, electric permissivity times the magnetic permeability.
Well, what I do know, I mean, I'm not a physics major, but what I do know,
yeah,
is that
that's
all
what
mathematical
exactly. Yeah,
equations
and so I'm
include speed
not
of
looking
light.
at this up right now, but if you look at the equation for the speed of light and how it relates to the reciprocal of the square root of the permissivity and permittivity, it would change things like the Coulomb barrier. It would change things like how the hydrogen atom is formed by the proton and the electron being a stable single entity. It would change things how the strong force would be interacting as a secondary force from the nucleus, and so you couldn't even have atoms at that point. It would just fundamentally change everything we know about the universe, such that the end result is everyone dies. Right? And so if everyone dies, your hypothesis is wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, not just that, but like it seems like it would be totally in conflict with the fine-tuning argument, which I find
it does, right?
hilarious,
Exactly, right.
but
It's actually
anyways.
antithetical to the fine-tuning argument. It really is. It absolutely is, because the fine-tuning argument is actually what says, hey, I'm not going to have a large degree of variance in the Summersby constant, or called alpha, which is a really interesting thing how that number comes about. I mean, a simplistic thing is like 1 divided by 137, but if you look at the actual number, that number for some reason does seem to be something that is just ingrained in the universe. If you're running like a simulation theory, and you have, back in the day, you had what's called a seed, for those who remember, and you would have a randomization seed. So as long as you ran the program with that same seed, you're going to get the same results, because there wasn't a true random number generator. And it just seems like the fine structure constant is something that it just is. It's one of many things that are like that. But why? Why is that number so prevalent in almost every single aspect of physics? I find it fascinating. Anyways, Gary, welcome.
Howdy, howdy,
man.
howdy. How you doing,
It's been a day. It's been a day.
It's been more than a day since been on the internet with
I've
you, man. How you
been
doing?
Surviving. I think that's the best way to put it. But I'm
okay.
Yeah, well, people know I had some issues, had some problems. Yeah,
well, you're
dude.
6 feet above ground. That's all that matters.
Dude,
you're still here, so
I
that's
gotta
the
tell
good
you,
part. That's the best
I just
part.
put something out on Twitter today where I said something like, as you get older, you get wiser, but you have less time to like utilize that wisdom. But I survive on the Maslow hierarchy of needs. I do. I survive on the fact that as long as you got a place, as long as you got food, as long as you got shelter and clothing, and somebody that even cares about you, you're good to go. And then sometimes you don't. All you really need is food.
Yep.
Place to poop. But to be comfortable. Yeah. I mean, shelter, food, clothing, poop, place to poop. That's Maslow's hierarchy of need.
Yep.
Yeah, whatever works,
Even
man.
if
You get
it's in
old,
your
and
hand.
sometimes you have no choice when you get older. Yeah.
As you get older, that might be your only chance. So, or
we've all seen 2001: Space Odyssey. We know you come back right where you start, man. It's full circle. The aging process. You end up pretty much as a child again. But yeah, so I mean, as long as I keep my mind on that, I do well. And so, and also I miss talking to people. I miss interacting. I miss running my arguments. And my mind was stagnating for 6 months, and I hated it.
That's never good.
I hate it. I've always told people, look, I can handle if my body goes to shit. I can handle physical unwellness to a degree, but once I start like losing my faculties, it's all over. Kill me at that point. Just let it be done. Euthanization. I don't want to be, somebody who suffers from dementia. I don't want to be somebody that suffers from Alzheimer's. Now, granted, those people that do suffer, my heart goes out to them, and it's an individual choice. But that's one of my biggest fears.
I always thought you were a bit demented to begin with.
Look, dude, everybody's messed up
way.
in the world, man. It's just to what degree and how you deal with it, right? Everybody's got their trials and tribulations, that's for sure.
Yep.
And that's where people have to realize that there's a human condition that exists throughout all people, I got about 15 more minutes in the call. So yeah, I'm not going to let this go on too
right.
much longer because I just want a quick hangout, and I think we've kind of exhausted everything that I really want to talk
Yeah.
about. I mean, it was nice that Kyle came in.
Now introduce me to who else.
Okay, we have
Who
Kyle,
else we have here? Who is this?
which is Christian Idealism, and we have
Hey.
Shane Anathema, also known as God. What's your name on? What's the other name?
It's still. I just changed
Anathema.
it to Anathema.
Surgeon General, yeah,
But
Surgeon
YouTube
General.
Surgeon General
I
before.
say brain fart, but yeah, you're basically running Anathema for quite some time. Yeah. So we do have a
Yeah.
question before we go. Dan the Machine says, question about possible worlds. If there's a possible world where John Wick exists, how does it give him legitimacy in the real world? And is that post hoc rationalism? Okay, in possible world theory, there's realism and anti-realism. In anti-realism, all possible worlds are independent from each other. They are not related in any specific way besides just by modal axioms. There's axioms like the T axiom, M axiom, S4, S5, S6, and each one of those axioms has a certain relationship between them, such as reflexivity, transitivity. And so when you're looking at possible world theory, when you look at a specific axiom, how you want to relate these worlds is what axiom you use. For example, if I remember the S5 axiom, if something is necessarily possible, then it's necessary. And so
Yeah.
that has, I believe, is it reflexive? I think for the S5, I think it's reflexive. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
and then
it
the other
is.
ones would be, transitive. And then there's one that's like a complete one of everything. But anyways, long story short, those don't exist in and of themselves. They're basically hypothetical, counterfactual worlds. And so if John Wick exists in one of those worlds, which he does, why? Because he's a contingent being. And a contingent being is something that is possible that can exist in at least one possible world, but not all of them. And somebody asked Dan, if it's contingent, why is it that he only can exist in one, or at least one, but why is it that John Wick could not exist in all possible worlds? Let's see what he answers. You guys want to take a stab at that? And I mean, I told you the answer, but it's because it's contingent. But what does that mean?
I could answer.
You want to give it away?
Yeah.
Kyle?
Yeah, so the reason why John Wick can't exist in all possible worlds is because he's
Exactly.
not a necessary being.
Exactly. If John Wick existed in all possible worlds, he'd be a necessary being, right? And I do believe that there are necessary beings. This is where Aaron Rod jumps the shark because he doesn't know what people mean by necessary beings.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
it doesn't always mean God.
He realizes it now. He's changed his tune a little bit since he got in debate with those three Muslims that I did a review on. That was, I still get.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Dude,
that was
I still get feedback.
That
on
was
that.
epic.
I still have people going, "Oh my God, this is one of the best reviews. This is epic. This is, this is Steve at his best." And I thoroughly appreciated all the people saying how much they liked that particular review. I love doing that one. But I think he's changed his tune to where he's like, okay, there's necessary beings like quantum fluctuations. Okay, he's getting somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, he's finally starting to get a little bit into philosophy. He's starting to understand it more than he used to. He
And
used
that's
to just
why we
dismiss it
bumped
outright
heads.
as
Right.
unnecessary for his arguments. Right. But he's starting to see the
I wish he would have listened to me
utilitarian
more.
aspect of it and how it's a bit more necessary than what he originally thought. He's starting to get into it.
I
He's
don't
starting
get
to
it because
understand it better.
Aaron would come to me. I remember he did a video on whether the universe had a cause, and it had something to do. He was talking something about Hawking's theory and whether you can go back, to the beginning of the Big Bang and things of that nature. Now, I just recently did a show on that. If you remember, I talked to Lawrence Krauss, right? And we were talking about the no boundary proposal, which is basically being able to go back to t equals 0 by using a negative time, by using basically a distance formula, x y z square root is distance formula, and then you add a time variable to that, and you make that a negative. You can do some weird stuff, and so you can get to the boundary of where time actually began theoretically that way. And he asked me, "Hey, will you review my video with King Crocoduck and let me know?" And so King Crocoduck and I got together and we reviewed his video. He did it from a professional point of view because King Crocoduck is a genius, and I did it from the lay, person who just happens to be able to read a book, right? I mean, that's my shtick. That literally is my whole shtick on YouTube. I'm a layperson that likes these things, and if I can understand it, anybody can. How many times people have to say it? I have to say that to people when they don't seem to understand that, because I still get people going, oh, Steve thinks he's an expert, when I've literally have said, no, that's not my channels. I'm not ever pretending to be an expert. I'm a layperson, but I can read and learn. And if I can, anybody can. And so I watched it and I was like, yeah, I thought it was pretty good. We made some, some constructive comments of how it might go over a little bit to, lay people. But when it comes to philosophy, he just balked at everything I had to say. When other people were telling him, Steve's making sense, Steve is right, why don't you listen to his argument? It would help you in your arguments against these theists and stuff like that. But he basically said, no, if Steve's right, then my entire life's work is for nothing. I'm like, well, a bit hyperbolic, but
I think he's finally come around on that. I think he's finally realized that, yeah, there is some validity to using philosophy in argumentation.
Yeah, but now he says an asshole.
He does. So
but now he's like, yeah, but Steve was an asshole about it.
He's going to be an asshole about it anyway.
Win.
Yeah, but that's kind of the way he does it. That's kind of the way he does it, because he is a very straightforward.
But here's the thing, Shane. Gary, I've never made anything personal with Aaron. I've always said I have respect for Aaron. I always said his things like creationism is brilliant. I thought he was funny, engaging. I never shat on him personally, although he thinks that I have, and I don't understand.
No.
I don't know where he gets that from, except from people telling him misinformation. When the facts is I've never done that.
It's people,
right.
Whispering
100%.
in his ear. That's really all it is. I love the stuff that he does. I think it's something we need. I think we need that, especially in today's world. We actually really do need what he does. So, but on the same thing, I also think that we really need what you do, because you get a little bit more in depth on philosophy than most people are comfortable with, and I think that's what is really important, because people have just completely checked out of stuff like that.
I appreciate that. I mean, that actually means a lot to me. Yeah, no, I might just leave it with that. I appreciate it, man. Oh, you suck it up,
I'm
man.
not sucking up.
I'll take the suck up.
Shut up.
But let's do this. Let's kind of wrap it up, because again, I don't want these to be very long. I want to be digestible so people can go back and watch them. I think this was a good hangout, and I think I just got my point across about theist. The new theists they're not putting forth the effort to really give the atheist any real challenges anymore. It's all personal attacks. It's all hyperbolic. It's all prats.
Like they actually did to begin with.
Some of the arguments are more formidable. I mean, we discussed earlier, the flying Trinity argument is a little more difficult. The modal ontological argument is very difficult. Although
oh yeah,
that's getting they thought about
myself
that
and Speed
more.
Watkins. Ben, we did a video on that, and it's really a lot more complicated than people think. A lot of people are like, oh, I wasn't really, well, maybe I did once or twice when I first was learning. I'm like, yeah, it does sound like it's defining God into existence, and that was the EXP's version of how to defeat that. But the reality is, it's not defining God in existence. It actually is a very deep modal logic that does follow from the axioms, but there are ways around it. I mean, nothing's foolproof. It's not bulletproof, right? But
nothing in
right.
philosophy.
And if it was bulletproof, then everybody would be like, oh my God, this proves God. Yeah. But it is something that I would give to the theist column of at least plausibility. I mean, it's not a bad argument. I don't think it's convincing, obviously, but it's just, it needs a little bit of understanding of what we're working with. Same thing with the Banach-Tarski paradox, right? That's not a bad mathematical proof. It doesn't mean that you're going to get two basketballs from one. That's the best way I can relate it as an analogy. Would you agree with that, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked into.
You ever seen the Tarski paradox?
I mean, I take a.
Okay.
Not that one specifically, but it's just my natural theology is not deductive. I think it's all
basically the Tarski paradox. Banach-Tarski just basically says using mathematics with infinite quantities and certain axioms, you can take mathematically a basketball, deconstruct it into infinite parts, and reconstruct it and get two of them out of it. Yeah, which obviously you cannot do ontologically, okay, well. but the math works when you're dealing with things like infinity. Weird things happen. Okay, yeah. Just like when you're dealing with modal logic, weird things can happen depending on what axioms you take. You know. Okay. All right. So, anyways, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up. Kyle, stop by more often. Subscribe to you're subscribed, right? Yeah, and
Yeah,
I'll hit you up, and we'll maybe have a little more profound discussion on something. I don't know. Shane, thanks for always for dropping by, man. Say hi to James for me.
Yeah, buddy. I will. I'll shoot you an email. We can get that
works for me. I know James has offered so many times for me to come on Modern Day Debate again. I keep turning him down, and I feel bad, but he never gives me a topic that I'm comfortable with. You know, and if I go back on my MDD, I don't want to look like completely stupid.
Well, I can help navigate that world for you.
I would love to go to DebateCon. It's unfortunate that Matt and Aaron are so, you know, because, you know, I would love to go. I know Leo goes. You know, I would love to be, you know, but people are like, oh my God, that steamer crazy. Oh my God, screw that guy.
Nah, I actually like people that you usually don't get along online, like as expected when everybody's face to face.
I think that too. I mean,
chill,
I was supposed to debate T-Jump one time when Modern Day Debate in LA did a debate between, I think it was Destiny and Vosh, and T-Jump and I were going to be the opener. But T-Jump got sick. But I haven't talked to him in a while. Maybe I should reach out to him.
It's a good time, man. It's obviously it's always nice.
I know,
to
I love
all
it.
these people.
I love it. I went to
on the internet face to face.
Dude, I went to that atheist book club. Atheist theist book club in Texas, and I did a seminar on epistemology, and it was several hours. And they were the nicest freaking people I've ever met. I swear to God, their hospitality was simply off the charts. It was so nice. Everybody there was super, super nice. I got to meet Eric Hernandez, who's just an amazing dude. And he's a theist. He's a Christian. And many other people. So yeah, one of these days, when you know, I would definitely go to an event again. You know, I think. But I am going to wrap it up. Yeah,
I'll shoot you an email from my my personal email. It's gonna say Shane and then my last name.
I will do that. All right, and Gary, stop by again. Always a pleasure, my friend.
Yeah, great to get back on here.
I'm gonna end the hangout because it's gonna end here in a few seconds, anyways, because it's gonna timer. You know. All right.
Night, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Good night, everybody.
All right, guys. I'm gonna wrap it up. Thanks for watching this, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Help me promote these things. I appreciate it. Definitely. You know, not going to be the size it was before, but I want to have these discussions just for my own personal edification, just my own personal enjoyment, I guess. It is a great way to vent. It is a great way to socialize. You know, I don't like going out that much. So I will be doing these, like I said, more often. I have been. And I'm, like I said, I'm cutting some short. So if you guys remember something of comedic value or pedagogical value, entertainment value, whatever, let me know, and I'll make it short. It has to be 1 minute or less, and I usually cut it down to 59 seconds because YouTube for some reason puts it at like 1 minute and 1 second and doesn't detect it as a short, which is annoying. So I kind of cut them down to 59 seconds. But let me know. And with that, thank you for my members, thank you for my mods, and I will be seeing you Sunday. Don't forget, Sunday, 3 o'clock, I'll be having a debate on Non Sequitur Show with Andrew Wilson from the Crucible and the Whatever podcast. A lot of people know what that podcast is. And Jessica Gill. And I think it's going to be very interesting. I just hope that people don't start dissing on it right away, because I only have one person go, "You're having Andrew on?" It's like, look, you know, I don't agree with the guy. I'm going to have people on I don't agree with, you know, but I think that Jessica's going to do an amazing job in tackling the situation. So with that, guys, good night, and I'll see you Sunday.